Greetings, Earthlings. Today we're going to be talking about the ego. Yes, and how it's your duty to correct the errors of the ego, the insane distortions, the crazy lies, the misperceptions. If you have a more or less complete understanding of ego, it almost becomes like a duty. Not necessarily correct other people, okay? We're not talking about other people here. Like if you're to the point where you see ego in other people, you're seeing it in yourself. Isn't that incredible? Give yourself a hand, pat yourself on the back. Do it. Because so few people are working on this that it is your duty to call out the errors of the ego. You could watch a news report and go, oh, that's wrong. That's wrong. Nope, that's not right. It's fundamentally wrong. Reality doesn't work that way. Oh, in the ego's reality, shit works that way, but the ego's reality is false. Let me tell you something else. The way you see the world is the way that you see the world. The world does not exist in exactly the way that you see it. Oh boy, howdy. This is going to be a fun one. Are you ready to go on this journey with me today on the Shaman Patrick Show? Let's go.
He was once a storm in human form, sharp tongue, cold soul, heart worn and torn, living like a ghost who missed his grave till the spirit sang out and called him brave. He got rewired by the great unknown, heard the call like a dial tone to the bone. So pull up a chair, enjoy the glow. This is the Shaman Patrick Show.
I had hoped to be able to promote our book, The Machinations of Ego, available on Amazon, but it's not available on Amazon yet. I don't know why. It's just not. It hasn't been approved for distribution yet, but that distribution should have happened at the latest 3 weeks ago. We're still waiting. Can't get any real answers about why this isn't on Amazon yet. It's just one of those things that goes on when you're dealing with ego stuff. Yeah, the ego probably doesn't want this book to come out to be able to reach a wider audience. And yeah, this is a promo for this book. If you want to understand the machinations of ego, get this book. It's available as an ebook as well. All right, end of promo. I would love for as many people to get that book because it really explains how stupid, how dumb, how fruitless, how pointless the ego is. When you truly understand what this shit is, you don't want to fuck with it anymore. And then you'll realize that it's kind of like a duty as an ancestor. Hey, you're the ancestors of the future generations. You're that important. Anybody hearing this, you're on the frontier of human evolution because humanity won't survive unless the ego is put into its proper place. Notice I don't say destroyed, get rid of. You actually don't need an ego. You don't need it. Not anymore. An awakened person has no need for an ego. An awakened person will find that the ego hampers them, slows them down, creates conflicts and problems. So if you're an awakened person and you're still fucking around with ego shit, come on. Come the fuck on. You don't need it. If you're truly awakening, you don't need it at all. Let's get on with today's presentation. The duty to correct the errors of the ego. Why this is a duty and not an option. I gave you a preview of some of the other things that I'm working on there. But if you're serious about awakening, you don't get to sit back and let your ego run the show like some deranged cruise director. You have a responsibility to yourself, to your spirit, and to everyone you interact with to correct the ego's errors. The ego isn't just some quirky roommate. It's a parasite that feeds on separation, conflict, and fear. Every time you let this nonsense slide, you reinforce the prison walls it built around your consciousness. This isn't about morality in the churchy sense. It's about survival of the true self. Correcting the ego's errors isn't optional. It's the spiritual equivalent of brushing your teeth. Skip it long enough and rot sets in. So for those of you who've had a spiritual awakening and boom, everything's different. You're more conscious. But you got to pull all that programming and conditioning out by the root. It's not a pretty process. It's kind of a painful process. And this is the thing, there's a lot of grief in it as well. As what used to interest you when you were operating out of ego consciousness, these things don't matter to you anymore. They don't matter. Like, I used to be obsessed with a lot of things that don't matter. They don't matter to me anymore. It's almost like a loss of purpose for a while, you know, like you just don't know what to do. You might have friends and family members saying, you got to focus on your career. You got to get a 401k. You got to do, you're going to lose. Because in the world of ego, it's a cutthroat battle for survival. It is. But outside of ego consciousness, things are calm. Things are not a big deal. You seem to always have enough money for things that you need. People kind of come out of the woodwork to help you do whatever you need to do. If you get a flat tire, if you are short a dime or a dollar at the grocery store, it's because you're out of that separateness. You're out of that every man for himself world, and you've stepped into the consciousness where it's about service and love and awakening, and you get access to all those things. You get access to the network, the brotherhood, the sisterhood, the, hey, I see you. How you doing? How you doing? You don't get that in ego consciousness. Not at all. But we'll talk about the core error of the ego. The ego is wrong about everything. It's wrong about everything. If there's one thing you can be sure of, the ego is going to be wrong about everything. And so the core error is separation. At the root of every egoic blunder is the big lie. The idea that you are separate from God, from others, from source, from truth. The ego whispers, you are special. You are alone. You must defend yourself. And that lie creates a world of fear, attack, and endless illusion. Illusions and delusions. It just don't ever stop. And there's a mistaken identity. You believe you are this unique, fragile snowflake cut off from the eternal. That belief is spiritual amnesia. And there's also the false autonomy. You play pretend like you're your own God, ruling your own little kingdom. It feels empowering, but it's the root of your terror. The ego's autonomy is always just a cover for isolation. And I love that Merrick and myself have an age gap relationship. He's closer to childhood than I am. Now, Merrick's father believed that you had to worry about stuff. My parents did too, but you had to worry about everything. And it was exhausting. It makes you sick. It makes you tired. It stresses you out. So Merrick's having a harder time letting go of that programming. He knows it's programming. He knows it's conditioning. Sometimes he'll get a phone call to remind him that he needs to worry about things. Because if you're not worried about things, that kind of shit makes you sick. So yes, especially if you're dealing with friends, coworkers, family members who want to reaffirm those ego's errors in your life, you do have to call it out. You do have to say, hey, worrying is like praying for something you don't want. God takes care of everything. There's really not that much to worry about at all. You just kind of exist in this state of well-being. You know, one of the things that we talk about when getting sober is one of the promises that comes true is that we have no fear of financial insecurity. It doesn't mean like we automatically become rich or abundant or resourceful. It means that the ego's needs must be purchased with physical money. The ego cannot be satisfied with something that's not purchased. The ego might need status symbols or it might need certain things, but the ego is the thing that freaks out about not having money because it actually needs that money to reaffirm itself over and over again. But when you step outside of ego, you're like, if I don't have the money, I don't need it. Obviously. So without the ego, if you're a value-oriented person, if you want to save money, work on ego issues, because most of the things that people spend money on are things that the ego wants. You don't really want that shit. No. You don't really need that shit, but the ego needs things. Drugs, alcohol, clothes, Viagra, condoms, boob jobs, cosmetic surgeries, big old houses to show, Lord, I've made it. Look at how hard I've worked. I've got this big old expensive house. So what? So what? Those things require a lot of upkeep that can grind you down. But if you're this type of God, and it's like you're ruling your own little kingdom, you're missing out. You'll always be afraid of losing it. Always be afraid of losing it. And that's what people grapple with. If the ego gets what it wants, it's not happy for very long. No. It's not happy. It needs something else. It's constantly needing and wanting and needing. But let's talk about those consequences of letting ego run the show. Fear and conflict. The ego creates wars inside you and projects them outward, keeping you locked in endless battles. Projection and guilt. Like a shady dealer, the ego offloads its guilt onto others, tricking you into believing they're the problem. And the illusion of reality. You end up worshiping shadows on the wall, mistaking illusions for truth, fighting ghosts while the real you is forgotten. Sometimes when I'm working with people, I'll say, what do you want? What do you want? Somebody asked me the question years ago. I've been living in the shadow of what my family wanted from me, what society wanted from me from so long. I was a chronic people pleaser. That when it came time for me to get sober and decide and choose things for myself, because when you're an addict, you don't ever get to choose things for yourself. When you're in ego consciousness, you don't have free will. You don't have free will in ego consciousness. But what do you want? It took my breath away. It's like, I don't know what I want. Nobody's ever asked me that before. Unless they were trying to manipulate me. What do you want? I want peace. I want serenity. I want a life without stress. I want a life without drama. I want a life without gossip. I want a life full of love. I want to go to bed at night in a comfortable bed with somebody that I love. See, money can't really buy those things. Money can buy the illusion of those things. But that's the consequences of letting the ego run the show. Fear, conflict, projection, guilt, and illusions and delusions. Those are the consequences. And if you're trying to appeal or get along with people who are still in ego consciousness, harmony is not the goal. If you're trying to be peacemaker, you're just pissing people off. That was the thing that helped me to no longer be a people pleaser, because I knew the more I tried to smooth things over with, that's not what they wanted. That's not what they wanted. They wanted endless drama, endless conflict, because that's the way the ego survives. If you come in attempting to take away the ego's food from a system or a family or a church group or a workplace, that's not they need that conflict. You're taking away the food for the ego. You're taking away the fuel for the pain body. So stop trying to be a peacemaker. Hey, if somebody's trying to paint you as the villain, be the villain. Be the villain. Is that hard for you to be a villain? Somebody's going to paint you. Be the baddest villain that people have ever seen. So how the ego keeps itself alive. There's the focus on form. The ego keeps you busy with appearances, distractions, and drama, so you never look underneath. And it's a closed system. The ego never questions its own premise, because the moment you poke it with real inquiry, the whole house of cards collapses. At the end of this video, I'm going to give you a bunch of questions that you can ask the ego to poke it with real inquiry. And so that whole house of cards can collapse for you as well. It's pretty awesome. But the ego keeps you busy with appearances, distractions, and drama, so you never look underneath. Like, I don't really care how my hair looks anymore. I mean, I kind of do, but I don't. I decided I'm just going to wear a tank top in every video. They're going to be black and white because I was spending so much time trying to make things look perfect. And I want things to look consistent and nice. And I'm like, I'll just black and white. I'm not Jeffree Star. I'm not a makeup artist. I'm not a lighting technician. Let me find a way to present this message in a way where I don't have to fuck with all that stuff. Because used to, I would turn on the camera and then ego would come up and say, well, you got some hair out of place and you're tired. And you're like, yeah, I'm a 53-year-old man. I really don't care how I look, but at the same time, I want it to look good for y'all. It's a fine balance. Fine balance. So I'm not as concerned about my appearance when it's like this, or really at all. But the ego never questions its own premise. So I was asking those questions. Can you ask the ego questions? Many people suffer from an incomplete understanding of ego. So here's the duty of correction. This isn't just nice inner work. This is warfare. You're required by the fact that you exist to take up the task of correction. See through the lie. Recognize fear as the ego's ID badge. When fear shows up, you've spotted the culprit. If you have someone in your life fear-mongering, it's ego. Fear-mongering comes from ego. Let me give you an example. You remember when people were wanting me, some of you out there, you very lovely, kind people, wanted me to be afraid of Peter Thiel and Palantir and mass surveillance and the stuff that Mid-Whitney Webb was talking about. And so I investigated it and I didn't see anything to be afraid of. Why is that? Well, even if there is mass surveillance outside of ego consciousness, I can just accept that for what it is. Doesn't really have any control over me. Why would I be afraid of that? Why would I be afraid of mass surveillance outside of ego consciousness? I don't think it's going to be that way because the fearmongers think that the software is capable of things that it just can't do. So there's a little bit of magical thinking in that as well. I see it all the time. I can't paw through YouTube without somebody freaking out about something that they don't understand. If you're scared of Palantir, listen to them talk. Listen to the experts about it. Don't listen to midwits. Y'all, seriously, y'all have got to stop listening to these midwits. They are going to drive you crazy. They're not even speaking the truth anyway. Understand that the government is going to have some software running it. Nobody's trying to take away your rights. Nobody's trying to do that. America is in a restoration process. It's in a revival of spirit process. It's in a remoralization phase. And if I truly saw something that to be afraid of, I will let you know. I will be the first to make a video about it. So make sure you like and subscribe so that you can be notified of the videos that I make. And if I tell you, this is something to be afraid of, you'll be first to hear it. But so far, I haven't heard anything or seen anything worth really being afraid of. So you shift your interpretation. Don't accept the ego's version of events. Call in your higher intelligence, Holy Spirit, witness, observer, whatever name you give it to reinterpret what's happening. Do you have a mentor? Do you have a spiritual teacher that you can rely on? So whenever you're dealing with the ego's version of events, are you checking in with someone? I mean, I'm in recovery. I got a phone full of contacts that I can call to see if I'm getting something messed up. Other sober people. Do you have a sober person in your life that you can ask questions of? Do you have anybody like that in your life? If you don't, find them immediately. You want someone in your life that can see through the ego's lies, whether it's a personal friend or a mentor or a sponsor or even a therapist, because you can spin out on ego stuff, like just spin the fuck out and be afraid and scared and all that stuff. But the duty of correction also is releasing the false self. Every correction peels away another layer of the fake identity, leaving you closer to your actual self, changeless, eternal, untouchable. Think about this. Every time you correct the ego, it peels away another layer of the fake identity, leaving you closer to your actual self, because your true self ain't afraid of shit. And you know why? Because the true self will not go down a dark alley. The true self will not hug a teddy bear made of barbed wire and go, ow, I got poked by this teddy bear. Your true self isn't going to do dangerous or stupid or immoral things. But every time you correct the ego and you say, whoa, hey, this could take years. For some people, it could take decades. For most people, they're never going to get it or understand it. So you might be the only person. Let me talk about this for just a little bit. When you are working on ego issues, you're gonna get ego attacks. Okay? But those ego attacks are also opportunities for you to release even more. You know, I've heard people started working on A Course in Miracles and things got worse for them. That's because they had such a shift in values and perception. They learned to set boundaries with people. And, you know, like in my case, having to set boundaries with family and say, oh, you don't get to lie to me anymore. You don't get to gaslight me anymore. You don't get to push me around. You don't get to call me names. And setting that boundary, there were consequences in my life. Like, it got pretty bad for me and it got bad for my husband, because we shifted and we told our loved ones, hey, you don't get to lie to us anymore. You don't get to manipulate us anymore. Hey, we're not going to co-sign your bullshit lies anymore. Some people retaliate. They do. Your life may get worse for a while, but are you going to abandon your quest for truth? You going to give up on this stuff? Because here's the promise. As soon as you disentangle yourself from that programming, that conditioning, when you learn to disconnect from the Wi-Fi of sickness and lies and psychological torture, it won't affect you anymore. You'll be able to go to a family reunion and they'll be casting glances and sneers at your way, and you're just, hey, what's up, y'all? How's it going? And they'll go, where the fuck have you been? Why haven't you called? You're a terrible person. And you're like, oh, hey, honey, how's it going? Because you know it's not them. It's the ego pissed off at you that you're not reaffirming their victim stories or their sad stories or their patriarchy stories or their woe is me. I used to go to family reunions, and you know what the ladies in my family talked about how sick they were. They would try to one up each other on how sick each other was. Well, I had renal failure 2 weeks ago. Oh, well, I've got cancer. Oh, well, I'm scheduled to have a double mastectomy. Oh, well, my toes have to get amputated. They don't talk about anything lovely or real or nice. All they do is talk about sickness. Why would I want to go to something like that? Oh, it's like a race to the bottom. And if you get well in a situation like that, I'm correcting the ego's errors. There was one time, I've told this story before, but it's really funny. My aunt and I went to visit my uncle in the hospital, and he would not eat the hospital food because he had a heart attack. And so he would not eat the hospital food. So you know what they brought him? Fried chicken and watermelon with a salt shaker. Like, he's not supposed to have salt. And so my aunts, they were like, well, he's got to get his strength up. He just won't eat that hospital food. So they brought him fried chicken and watermelon with salt on it. And while they're doing this, I'm like, is he supposed to have salt? They were like, oh, be quiet. But you don't know anything. You don't know anything. Well, the next day, my aunt gets a phone call, and my uncle had renal failure. Almost died. And they're like, I wonder how that happened. I'm like, shit, hanging out with you people is going to get people killed. It's going to get people killed. How could you have that little self-awareness? Calling out the ego's errors. Got to get his strength up. Oh my God, these country ass people. These country ass people. That one aunt, she was on a vinegar diet and a mayonnaise diet and all these, they were always on all these creepy, crazy diets. And then I'm like, well, I'm a shaman now. Well, that's crazy. That doesn't make any sense. The mayonnaise diet. What was the mayonnaise diet? You just eat mayonnaise for every meal. It's a miracle I lived being raised in that shit. You know, I know there's a God. I know there's a God. These were the most obese people you have ever seen. They never stopped being on diets. Cuckoo crazy. Whew. But here's why the ego fears correction. The ego sees correction as death because it is death to the ego. But here's the twist. You don't die when you correct it. You live. The false self dissolves and the true self takes the wheel. That's why correction isn't punishment. It's liberation. You see? But I know this, like when I've tried to help people with their ego issues, they get hostile. They're like, because it feels like it's death to the ego. The ego can't stand to be corrected. That's why you don't correct the ego in other people. Like I'll work with people formally in a one-on-one client situation. They have given me permission to work on their ego issues with them. But if I'm not working with somebody, if I'm not getting paid for it, I'm not going to fucking do it because it doesn't even work anyway. You cannot correct the ego in another person. It doesn't work. However, you can correct the ego in yourself. It'll feel like dying. It will. It'll feel like you're dying, but you're not. You're not. But I want to talk about this being a necessary part of spiritual hygiene. In concrete shamanism, correcting the ego isn't just a mental exercise. It's energetic maintenance. When you fail to correct the ego, you leave psychic garbage lying around. And spirits, hungry little bottom feeders, love to feast on that waste. Every lie, projection, and fear thought becomes an opening for obsession, possession, or just plain spiritual static. Correcting the ego is how you sweep your field clean. It's how you evict freeloading entities and parasites that thrive on illusion. Think of it as taking out the trash, washing the altar, clearing the smoke. You don't do it once, you do it regularly, or the buildup chokes you. When you correct the ego's errors, you're not just serving your personal sanity. You're keeping your spirit space sacred. You're defending your house against intruders, keeping your energetic system strong and uncluttered, and protecting the tribe around you from catching your psychic infections. Correction is not a chore. It's an initiation. It's the warrior's vow to stand guard at the doorway of perception, refusing to let the ego or its spiritual hitchhikers define your reality. Yeah, the only way you can be controlled by spirits or lower order entities is through the ego. That's it. So if you don't want to be manipulated by anyone, including spirits, you are going to work on your ego issues. You're going to say, I want to know how to not be controlled anymore. And that's where I call bullshit on those who are scared of mass surveillance or if they're afraid of governments and things like that. I'm like, honey, that's just ego's fear. Nobody can control you. They can only control your ego. That's it. I call bullshit on all fear and chicken littleisms and all of that. There's really nothing to be afraid of. And I will call bullshit on that. All right, in the next segment, we're going to talk about some questions to poke the ego with. Are you ready to poke this bitch? Well, don't do that. But you can ask these questions. I'm not going to ask the questions of, well, you know what I mean. Okay, so you've recognized that the ego has become active. It's easier said than done, I know. But you recognize that the ego has become active. Any anxiety, any fear, any weirdness, that's the ego. So here are some questions you can ask that ego when it becomes active. Man, this is easier said than done. So should I go? No, I'm just going to go with it. So here we go. Who gave you authority? If you're really in charge, why do you need my constant attention to stay alive? Why does the ego need constant attention to stay alive? If you're overthinking, it's ego. If you're worried about something, it's ego. If you're thinking about the past or the future, it's ego. It wants your attention. Why do you need my attention, ego? Why do you need it? And here's another question. Where do you get your energy from? If you're so powerful, why do you collapse the moment I stop feeding you fear? Because the ego's not all that powerful. It's just not. It's kind of a little bitch. It steals power from you, essentially. And it steals power from other people. It's no longer necessary. You see? Here's another question. What exactly are you defending? Why does everything feel like a threat to you? What's so fragile about your little kingdom that you panic at the slightest breeze? That ego panics. Ooh, yeah. Because the ego needs to defend every opinion or thought or anything like that. So who are you without my story? Strip away the drama, the roles, the costumes. What's left of you then? And why do you need enemies? Why do you project conflict outward just to feel real? If you stop attacking, do you even exist? Do you have anybody in your life that it's easy to attack them? They keep doing fucked up shit. You just feel like it's easy to attack them, to feel negative about them. You got to clear that shit up. You have to. Yeah, like there have been people in my life, sometimes recently, where I feel them thinking about me all the time. They're trying to provoke me into attacking them. They're trying to push me, prod me into attacking them. And sometimes I'm just like, look, bitch. No, you're not going to get the reaction out of me. You're just not. So quit thinking about me. Oh, yeah. The more you work on your ego issues, you start to get paranormal powers, especially like with people that you've been close with or close to. You can feel them thinking about you. It's wild. It's wild. I can't say it's entirely pleasant, but if you're thinking at all, it's ego. Humans don't really think. It's not really the way that it works for human beings. Why do you need enemies? That was the last question. Let's move on to these questions. How many times have you been wrong? All these worries, all those fears, how often did they actually happen? Why should I keep trusting you? Hey, here's the thing. The ego is always wrong about everything each and every time. So at some point you're just like, why do I believe this shit? Why do I believe this voice in my head if it's going to be wrong all the time? I know many people, you don't resonate with some spiritual teachers. You stop resonating with them. Some people have stopped resonating with me. You can stop resonating with the ego today. You can say, I'm not buying this garbage anymore. I'm not buying this bullshit. What do I need to be afraid of? Why do I need to have enemies? Why do I need to be angry or upset over things that have nothing to do with me? Why are you obsessed with control? If you were truly autonomous, wouldn't you be at peace? Why does control always mean chaos in disguise? The ego loves control. Controlling people have one thing in common: out of control egos, each and every time. And here's number 9. Wait, 8. Why do you always avoid silence? If you're the real me, why do you freak out when I sit still and quiet? Like, I've wanted to do an episode where it's just a silent episode. I might do that soon. Just a silent episode, just to show the ego. You don't have to talk. You don't have to fill the air. You just be silent. Merrick says for me to not do that, but what do you think? Should I do a silent episode? Wouldn't that be pretty cool? Just to so we could be silent together. I think that would be pretty awesome. And what happens if I stop believing you? If I withdraw my faith from your stories, what's left of you but smoke and echoes? What happens if I stop believing in the ego? What happens if you stop listening to those stories? I mean, sometimes people have gotten really upset with me in the past for saying I don't want to hear those sad stories because those sad stories aren't even true. They're not even true things. They've gotten really mad at me, really upset. They haven't been upset with me. The ego in them has been very upset. That's for damn sure. And number 10, what are you so afraid of? Why does the idea of unity, love, or surrender feel like death to you? Because unity removes the ego's control mechanisms. Love, you saw it in the video I did yesterday about Erica Kirk forgiving her husband's murderer. Bzzz. Jury's still out on all that. Or surrender. Surrendering to God feels like death to the ego, and it usually is. If you surrender to God, then that ego will leave you. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you're panicked, worried, upset, just surrender to God. I swear this will clear this up for you. Just surrender. Like, I was talking to a mystic years ago, and she was like, well, what are we surrendering to? What do you mean surrender? When you tell me surrender, what are we surrendering to? You're surrendering to God. You're surrendering to higher forces. Like, what we do here doesn't even really matter. We get to just kind of be here and experience life. We can live this life detached or attached, or what you could choose however you want to do it. We're just here experiencing this life. That's what we're doing here. So when you surrender, you're getting into the rhythm of it all. You're letting go of resistance. I mean, some mornings I wake up, I don't feel great, but I don't try to make myself feel better either. I'm just like, this is just how I feel right now. That's surrender. Not trying to change it, not trying to fix it, not trying to control it. Just being present with whatever is going on. You know, and I've heard a spiritual master say the secret is to just not care what happens. You just no longer care what happens. And if you care what happens, it's probably ego. So everything I've talked about in this episode today, I want you to understand that when you truly understand and know the machinations of the ego, you won't fuck with it anymore. And it will be a duty to correct those errors because we're lifting each other up here. You know, there's somebody out there in your life right now who's struggling with something, and they're going to need you to have your head about you. I mean, if you love other people and you love yourself, you will work on ego stuff. It's really the only thing to do after you've had a spiritual awakening is to get rid of that programming. It can take 5 minutes or 5 years. For most people, it takes 5 years, sometimes even longer. Hardly anybody wants the 5-minute option because you might end up in a mental institution if you want the quick way. But many people say, man, I wish I would have chosen the quick way. So let all these false things be removed from you. Just let it go. Let it all go. Let it all go. I love you so very much. Please have a beautiful, lovely day. Bye-bye.
I've carried the weight of shadows, built towers out of stone, but every wall I'm clinging to just keeps me far from home. The tighter I close my fingers, the faster it slips away. The truth is in the opening, not in the games I play. So I let it all go, the battles, the burdens, the needed control. Like rivers return to the ocean, my heart comes back to the home. I let it all go, and in the surrender, I finally know the love I was chasing was here in my soul. I thought I could shape the silence, carve meaning from the air, but love was never captured, it was always waiting there. just the quiet of forever, where I leave the past behind. I let it all go, the battles, the burdens, the need to control. Like rivers return to the ocean, my heart